Welcome back to my RODRILL channel based on London fields, where the crime rate is believed to be high, but not as high as it was 2 years back. Police say it's gotten quiet since then, even though the violence still continues. However, what London fields residents went through in 2021 and 2022 was a tragedy they'd not want to go back to ever again. We'll be looking at a well-talked gang war that took place in London fields, which involved at least 7 or more people dying in this war, with the 156 and N15 alliance versus PeckhamBoys gang war hitting the streets of London fields. Everything in this video for entertainment purposes and nothing much worse than that. Time to get straight into the video. This alliance consists of 2 gangs which have been close with each other for a long while now. The alliance started after they both shared the same beefs and thought an alliance would be a great way to back each other in their beefs. The gangs of this alliance includes 156, or as they call N gang from Northolt in the UB5 postcode and N15 from the N15 postcode based in South Tottenham. There are also other gangs that are close with the 156 and N15 alliance. These gangs include TRB or Trap Bontas, which are based around Barking IG11, and Harlem Spartans based around the Kennington Park estate in SC11. Another fact is that 410 were also close with the allied gangs, but did have beef with a couple other gangs that were either in the alliance or close to the alliance. However, they still had beef with the PeckhamBoys gang. PeckhamBoys were a large street gang based in SC15, which came out to be one of the biggest gangs in London fields. PeckhamBoys didn't really have any alliances backing them as much as 156 and N15 did. However, they were still close with a couple other gangs that were also involved in the beef with them. The gangs include Rayners Lane, from the H to postcode. They were quite large and had a massive reputation, although some people saw them as the least active. Another gang that was close with PeckhamBoys was Masco 17, based from the Brandon estate in SE17, who also had a good reputation at the time before they fell off. However, this video will mainly be focused on PeckhamBoys and 156 and N15. Now it's said that the deadly war of London fields enraged between both sides after a prominent member of 156 was brutally shot, putting him on life support for a couple days. However, that's something which will be speaked about later in the video. But the real reason as to why 156 and Peckham started beefing will shock you. 156 and Peckham were allied at one point, so things was going well. Until then, some Peckham youngers would start going Northolt looking for problems, which 156 youngers and olders were not happy about. 156 would then go to Peckham armed with knives, as they wasn't taking disrespect lightly. They'd meet up with PeckhamBoys leader and talk about the relations between them. Eventually the Peckham leader would tell them the alliance is off, but would get stabbed up badly, leaving him hospitalized. Now it is noted that the beef between both sides wasn't enraged at this time, so there wasn't really much events up until the summer of 2021. Now this event in which I believed enraged the war of what I was going to talk about at the start of the video. So let's get straight into it. So on the 24th of August 2021, a prominent member of 156 named Fan stated would be walking round Peckham, finding rivals to catch, seeing he had an online argument with one. As he arrived, a man would approach him and start G-checking him. Fan stated would refuse to reply as he believed the man was a random. Until then he realized he was face to face with Corey, or CJ for short. Fan stated would flash his knife in an attempt to stab Corey, but the tables would turn as Corey would then back his gun out, shooting Fan stated, putting him in critical condition. Paramedics would arrive on scene and just about saved Fan stated's life. The same day this happened, members from PB would go on social media and start mocking the incident, mainly Splashface, who was a PB younger at the time. After the news went everywhere, 156 and Fan stated's friend LR would not let this slide, as he was well respected. A couple days after Fan Stated came out of hospital, 156 and N15 would plot a revenge attack on PB in revenge for Fan Stated. Right after this incident, Fan Stated, LR, Mostarino and Glaz would slide to Peckham looking for retaliation. They'd arrive at their estate and catch Corey, the shooter of Fan Stated. Glaz would start chasing Corey eventually, before Ella shot Corey's leg. The four would eventually shoot him even more, putting him in critical condition. Police were called around 7:30 in the evening, along with paramedics to Peckham, as Corey was shot badly, nearly killing him. They couldn't identify the suspects on CCTV, but believed this was the doings of 156 and N15, as it was mocked all over social media because of how respected Corey was. PB decided to call it beef even further and decided to cross the line even furthermore, as they didn't want to take the disrespect lightly. On the 26th of August 2021, during a normal afternoon, a PB member named R1 would be plotting for revenge, though what N15 and 156 did to Corey. He'd be seen on CCTV carrying a gun in his hand in Northolt, looking for a rival. Eventually he'd catch a 156 member named Ebenezer lacking outside the estate and start beating him up with other Peckham youngers until he started feeling weak. Ebenezer would then get shot at least 6 or 7 times, leaving him to bleed out on the scene. R1 and other PB members would then run off from the scene, with Ebbs on the floor helpless. However, paramedics and police would arrive 3 minutes after the incident. Paramedics attempted to save the male's life, but he'd die 3 hours after. Now this was a huge loss for 156, as Ebenezer was a huge member to them, and he wanted to change his life. All Ebenezer was doing was waiting for his friend, only for his life to be taken away at a young age for such tragedy. Police say the killers besides one that was mentioned before are yet to be identified to this day, which is shocking. Now 156 and N15 were eyeing social media and saw a PB member named Stacks posting his location taunting them when Ebenezer died. Stacks would be screaming Ebenezer pack, fuck 156 and N15 on his story to the point the Northolt and N15 members couldn't take it lightly. The same day Ebenezer died, 156 and N15 members would be caught on CCTV driving around Peckham on a black Range Rover looking for rivals. The Rover would be seen parking up beside Stacks with 4 men jumping out aiming guns at him. One of them would grab him and put him in the boot helpless, before speeding off into an unknown location. More CCTV would see the car park inside a garage in Tottenham, with 2 more men pulling up at the scene. Eventually one of the men would get a pistol out and start beating him with his full anger, before himself and his friends would shoot him in the head, killing him instantly. Police would then launch an investigation, as the murders of Ebenezer and Stacks got to the point where crime was rising. 156 and N15 would see this as a win, and would show PB they were not to be messed with at all. Stacks would be getting mocked throughout social media by his ops, especially for behaving tough on the internet. If he didn't post his location, maybe he wouldn't have gotten killed brutally. Rest in peace Ebenezer and Stacks. However, this didn't stop PB from retaliating when Stacks died. On the 27th of August 2021, a day after Ebenezer and Stacks' deaths, a 156 younger named Ayla would be chilling with his friends. This is when everything was peaceful. However, that didn't stop a white Range Rover pull up beside him with Peckham youngers armed. One of them, who looked to be Splashface, would hop out and ask Ayla, "Where you from?" Ayla would respond with Northolt, before he'd get shot in his belly and stabbed 8 times in his face, leaving him to bleed out on the scene. Bystanders saw what happened and was shocked to see what they were walking through. Ayla's friends would be pleading for him to wake up, as they believed he was dead already. However, paramedics managed to revive him, and he would be taken to hospital for a couple days. Allegedly, Ayla wasn't even a 156 member, as nobody knew him much. However, that didn't stop PB from wanting more bodies. A few days later, after the Ayla incident, they'd be lurking around London fields, looking for anyone from 156 they'd spot someone who seemed to be named Junior walk out JD Sports on the high street. Junior would spot the Peckham members and run away as one of them recognized him. Junior managed to outrun two of them, but would get caught a minute later by the same masked men. They'd start stabbing him everywhere in his body, which he was pleading for them not to do. Unfortunately, the masked men wouldn't show any remorse and would shoot him once in his face before leaving the scene laughing. Bystanders would attempt to try save Junior before paramedics arrived. Paramedics would try as hard as they could to save his life, but he'd die outside the Northolt estate, leaving 156 with two dead members. Vibes and other 156 holders would be furious because it was making the 156 and N15 alliance look bad enough. So he commanded some youngers to ride back, which they did in an hour or so. 156 and N15 members would be seen lurking near Peckham looking for Splashface specifically. They'd catch Splashface walking out his house luckily enough before one male would ask him, "Where's he from?" Splashface would respond with Peckham before running away, as he identified Ella in the car with other people. Unfortunately, he wasn't quick enough, as Ella would shoot him in his back 4 times and get stabbed by the 156 and N15 members, pretty badly injuring him. The injuries left him dead on the scene outside his block, but luckily enough, he got revived by paramedics. Now Splashface got really lucky, especially considering how much of a target he was for giving verbal non-stop to 156 and N15. However, they wasn't done yet, as Sneaks and other N15 and 156 members were not stopping till night. On the 29th of August, during the midnight, a young PB member would be on his way home from a party. As he got off the bus near Peckham, he'd walk down an alleyway close to his home. But what he didn't know was there was a small group of people waiting down the alleyway. They'd come out and ambush him, asking him the usual, "Where you from?" He'd respond with Peckham before one of the men would start beating him up. The young male would try fight his way out, but would get stabbed in his chest and shot in the head by one of the men, killing him instantly on the scene. The young male, who was named Choose, was a PB younger who allegedly had involvement in the beef, was trying to leave the road life, but it caught up to him and his family, who felt taunted as he was reported missing the same day he died. Rest in peace, Junior and Choose. 156 and N15 wasn't done yet either this time around, as they were still looking for revenge for Ebenezer. The next day in the afternoon, Ryan was getting ready to finish school. Just as he left school, he'd head to McDonald's with his friends to buy a meal. But what Ryan and his friends were not aware about was 156 and N15 got a drop on him, which they actually did. As Ryan got off the bus and headed to McDonald's, he'd spot Sneaks waiting for him outside. Sneaks would go up to Ryan and ask him, "Where you from?" Before Ryan could respond, Fan stated, and to other 156 members would come from behind and stab Ryan in his back before Sneaks struck his leg, leaving him to bleed out on a public town centre. The police managed to launch an investigation and did arrest 6 people connected to the incident. However, they were let off due to the lack of evidence to convict any of them. A lot of events took place after the incidents with Splashface and Choose. There was many tit-for-tat shootings and stabbings between both sides, which put a lot of members and civilians on life support at the time. So police was told to up their game and put on a Section 60 round London fields, which they did due to the high crime rate. However, this didn't stop 156 and N15, despite getting back into the beef. Heat was even between both sides. On the 29th of August 2021, a PB older named Frank was chilling outside the Peckham block with his friends, showing off his motorbike. Eventually, a couple minutes later, a white Range Rover would pull up beside Frank and his friends with 4 men inside of it. One of the men would hop out and start G-checking him. He'd then run away on his motorbike, which would induce a high-speed chase for a few minutes. As Frank was about to lose sight of the 156 and N15 Rover, he'd crash his motorbike into a tree, killing him weak on the floor due to how fast he was going. Eventually, Ella would catch him with 3 other people in the car, and would start pressuring him whilst he was laying on the floor weak. The four men would force Frank to get up and drag him to a nearby empty shop to torture him. CCTV would capture them tie Frank up to a chair and torture him to say PBK, which he didn't do. So Ella would grab his knife, cutting Frank's index finger off. Frank would be screaming in pain and panicking as he knew their intention would be to kill him, so he'd plead for them to let him go. Unfortunately for him, Ella would tell the 156 members to get their guns ready as he had enough of talking. Frank tried stopping them, but all of them would fire 18 bullets at him, killing him instantly. His body would be recovered the next day in the morning, and police would launch another murder investigation, seeing as murder was rising in London fields too much. Another thing I forgot to mention was Ella and Frank would have a fight in Peckham High Street. Ella would stab Frank so badly, forcing him to remove his kidney. Nobody knows who else was involved in this murder with Ella, but people believe Fan stated Roman and Dwayne were responsible too. But it doesn't really change anything, as Fan stated and Roman are in prison for a separate murder, and Dwayne flew out the country after the murder. Rest in peace, Frank. Things were starting to go downhill for PB, as they already lost 2 members in the same week since killing Junior. Unfortunately, another member from PB would have his life put to an end. On the 7th of October 2021, a 15-year-old male named Presley Turner, who also went by Spy as his road name, was touring a couple of states for his ops in favor of revenge for Frank. A couple minutes after touring, he'd spot 3 people before they spotted him. One of them deemed to be LR, and the other to being T or Beholders. Because Spy was eager for revenge, he'd back his snub at the 3 of them with intent to kill, as they'd take cover for the sake of it. Unfortunately for Spy, his gun would jam on the 3 of them as they jumped out of cover, which gave them a massive advantage now. But Spy would run away before they could do anything to him. Spy couldn't make it far, however, as Ella caught up to him for a couple minutes, and he'd stab Spy in his back, putting him on the ground. The Tia Beholders would catch up eventually, and all 3 of them would stab Spy viciously. Spy would scream for help in the neighborhood, but Ella wasn't stopping until he delivered the final blow. One of the Tia Beholders would then drag Ella to calm him down, as bystanders was watching from windows, and he was already out of control. The 3 attackers would flee the scene, and bystanders would run from nearby houses and shops and call the police and ambulance. The Peckham estate would be taped off, and paramedics would attempt to save the male's life. Unfortunately for Presley, he'd lose his life 3 hours later and would be pronounced dead on the scene. Another murder investigation would be launched, and allegedly Ella would get arrested an hour after the murder and put in for questioning. But police would then let him go due to lack of evidence the next day. The Tia Beholders haven't been caught for this murder too, so it remains unsolved to this day, unfortunately. Police say it's hard to find who's responsible for the murders in London fields too. Rest in peace Spy or Presley Turner. Now 156 and N15 were nowhere near losing the beef and for causing major tantrum in London fields. However, they still didn't want to stop yet, and would catch another young Peckham member who would also lose his life to the streets. Just after Presley Turner died a few weeks ago, 17-year-old male Brad Rowley, who was known as Brad by his friends, was finishing up his first month of college. As he said his goodbyes to his friends, he walked to the exit to make his way home. What he didn't know, however, was that his rivals were waiting for him outside his college in a car. The CCTV footage would capture 3 males glancing at Brad, and a foot chase would proceed between the lot of them. Brad managed to run inside a nearby corner shop, hoping for them to run past. But the 3 males would run in the same shop and catch up to him. He'd plead for the attackers to let him go, and he did not want beef. One of them would scream should have thought about that before and start stabbing Brad really badly. The shopkeeper would notice this and call police and ambulance right away, but Brad would be pronounced dead on the scene. The killer in question to this day is fan stated, and the TOB members involved are unnamed. But fans stated is already in jail for involvement of murdering Ryan a year later. This just proves that anyone can get it no matter what. And that was exactly the case for Brad, as he wanted to change his life around. Rest in peace, Brad. I will be ending the video off here as of now. And if you've learned anything from it, this proves that road life is not a game, as loads of people have lost friends and families to the streets by either death or jail. I may have not covered everything, but that'll be for a future video. Hope you enjoyed this video. Enjoy the rest of your day. Peace.